All right. Hello, Brian. If you want, you can introduce yourself and what you're running for.
Great. I'm Dr. Brian Beck, and I am the District 2 counselor, and I am running for mayor in 2026 here in just a few weeks.
Right on. Well, we will get right into the questions. The first three are going to be about public transit. So we'll start with question number one, which is, what is your experience with using public transit? Have you used things like Go Zone, Connect buses, and A Train?
It's good that you asked that because when I moved here, one of the things that attracted me to my house in Idiot's Hill was I worked at TW as a professor at the time, and I was able to. Yes, it wasn't TW and Idiot's Hill aren't very far apart, so I was able to walk. So definitely the part of ped pedestrian was there. I've experienced that. I was able to bike. I used to bike to and from TW. At the time, back when we first got here, there was a bus route that ran back to Idiot's Hill, and I was able to, in inclement weather, or if I wanted to go out to UNT or something like that, if I was meeting with the biology department out there, I was able to experience putting the bike up on the rack and having it go around the town. And then I've all and we put the green line and A train in just after I got here. So I was able to get on the bus, put my bike on the bus, get to the transit station, and at least once experience putting my bike on the train all the way down to the med center. And because I used to have an office at UT Southwestern, and so I did that because the downtown med center station um, was not exactly at the med center, and so you either had to ride another bus or you had to bike. So I've been able to experience all those pieces of it, and I've been really sad over the years as the bus routes slowly just got peeled away and peeled away and peeled away. I was still able to bike. I was still able to walk. And eventually I left TW and went to work for UT Austin. And of course, I'm not biking to Austin. But so there I experienced the telecommuting part of mobility. But yeah, no, I watched it peel down to the point where I was having to use my car for everything, even though I didn't want to. I wanted to bike, I wanted to walk, I wanted to use the buses. And have I used GoZone? Yes. It's been hit or miss for me. I've had times when it's been very successful, picked me up right away, almost ride share style, Uber Lyft style. I've had times when the headways got so long that I gave up, and I've had times when the headways got so long that the app just canceled my ride. So almost every aspect of transit in Denton have I used.
Right on. We love to see it. Let's see. Question number two. Accessibility is a big issue in public transit. How do you plan to work with DCTA to address things like safe sidewalks, unprotected bus stops, low route coverage, etc.?
Oh, no, I'm really glad you asked this question. It's one of the reasons that when I got on council, I was very interested in getting on the mobility committee, and I'm currently vice chair of the mobility committee. And so one of the things we focus on is robust mobility planning, destination pathing. Where are the schools, the workforce locations, the shopping, the retail, the grocery stores? Then how do I design a network between them? And not only do I how do I design a network between them, but how do I design a functional network? So one of the first things, like if you're cycling, and I got kind of back into cycling when we started doing e-bike rebates not too long ago, because yeah, I'm in my 50s, but the e-bike helps a lot. I don't have to work as hard, and so I've been e-biking around a lot. And so one of the things I noticed is no matter what kind of bike you have, the number of racks available to park your bike and lock it, and you're like, that's a really trivial thing, but it absolutely affects transit. It's a real world implication. If you're trying to get to and from a school, there's not enough bike racks. If you're trying to get to and from a grocery store, there's not enough bike racks. If you're trying to get to and from downtown, there's not enough bike racks. Are there some? Yes. So are we providing the service? Yes, but it needs to be better. The pathing needs to be better. As we're designing our mobility path, there needs to be pickup and drop off points for like micro mobility. And we're putting those into the plan. Bump outs so that we can have bike parking in maybe one or two, or maybe as many as four slots in the square, and then off square Muse streets. Can you design it so that I don't need my car, at least for bike ped? Can I do navigational aids so that I know where to park if I am using my car? Can I use navigational aids so I know where to put my bike if there's not enough bike racks? And so some of these will be probably something like a park mobile, which is a license plate recognition. But some of them will be so that then we can manage parking downtown. Everyone says, "Oh, I hate the parking downtown," but we're only 70% parked. It's a perfect opportunity to show people that if we did parking management, transit management, bus management, bike ped management, we could have additional synergies and spaces and efficiencies so that I don't have to spend $20,000 on per parking spot. A new parking spot costs $20,000. And how much, like, I think a bus is, I should go look. I don't know. We can Google it, but like, let's make up a number. I don't know what a bus costs, $500,000, but let's pretend a bus costs $500,000. In what is that? That's 20 spots, 25 spots. Sorry, 25 parking spots that I have to build is for every bus. But that one bus can now take 50 people, not 25 people. And so the math just doesn't math without mass transit and expanding the bus routes and getting back to where we were. And so I will be working with DCTA to try to use, I don't think their idea of using GoZone as a last mile a destination hub mechanism is sort of icing on the cupcake, but it can't be the cupcake. GoZone can't be the cupcake, just like icing isn't nutritious by itself. It needs to be on the cupcake. The cake itself needs to be mass transit and buses. So I'll be working with them. And if that means that we need to figure out a dedicated pathing structure, use trip funds to put dedicated paths in. Some folks in the community have been suggested that out to Discovery Park or to and from the transit stations or to and from the high schools or to and from the shelter. But we need to be serious and intentional about transit-oriented design.
100%. Question 3 kind of touches a little bit on that last answer with mass transit and GoZone, but question 3, of course, is Dentonites have said that GoZone is inefficient, unreliable, and uncomfortable. How does GoZone factor into your plans for public transit improvement, if you wanted to get a little more into that?
No, I absolutely, GoZone by itself, part of the reason, we kind of made the glib analogy, or I made the glib analogy to a cupcake to frosting, but it's worse than that. There's nothing wrong with rideshare and this sort of mobility method, except in this case, these kinds of things that are not commercial without a profit margin that are trying, they're not sustainable. If you look at other places where Via and other companies like them have put in these publicly funded ride shares, they just grow and they 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 grow. And it's the blob that ate Chicago. It will never, to get the headways that everyone wants. Really, what you're talking about is an autonomous fleet that, and let's not get into the hiring and firing of bus drivers. let's not even go to the workforce issues of an autonomous fleet. And I think we do need an autonomous fleet at some point, but let's not go there for this. It's just the way we're doing it now with human beings as drivers is just not sustainable. So how could we use it? And I think we finally got to a point where, and I don't honestly understand how Highland Village and some of the other GoZone service areas are surviving on a pure GoZone model, because it's growing and growing. Headways on buses are now back to where they were at pre-pandemic levels. And so what does that mean for the GoZone itself? It means that the GoZone is, I think, a good use of it is to do experimental pathing. Where do I need to go? have I reached a certain density of go zoning such that and ride sharing that I can now put a bus in that spot. And now I can actually get true economies of scale with a bus. And I think Paul Christine and DCTA are trying to do that. But I made the comment back to the other cities in the Metroplex or in the Dentonplex in Denton County that I don't know how they're doing it because they're not using it to design other alternatives to go zone. So I don't know what it's giving to them, but for the city of Denton, I think an appropriate good use of it is for experimental path development. And for one-off services, like you need to go pick up somebody that has disability needs, kind of like not Connect. I forget the name of the disability service. I'm sorry, but if you've got a special needs service, I could see that. But you still will have training. You still will have mapping issues. You still have some of these things that I think it will be always remain a challenge to get over. And some of that is even once we get over that, they suffer from right now a real bad reputation issue. And so it's a challenge to get, even things completely being equal, they have a reputation of kind of being a mistake. And so that's going to take a while for people to get through to use it in a new, productive, efficient, experimental way. So they have this educational challenge that I think we really need to address. And maybe one way we could do that is some intentional route design. And I don't know if that's exactly with buses. I think something that people have mentioned to me a lot is maybe the route that goes to and from the transit center could be, I know we were talking about rideshare, but it could be something like a trolley looking car that harkens back to the vintage era of Denton. And it's going to and from UNT up and down Hickory and Oak and around downtown. And that's just a sort of scenic touristy thing. And then the traditional bus routes are taking you to and from UNT, to and from Discovery Park, to and from the high schools, to and from the workforce locations. But that last one is going to be really critical. The fact that neither the bus cloud nor the Go Zone cloud gets out to our workforce centers west of town means that workforce people that is supposed to be benefiting, I guess they just drop off just west of the merge and walk out to Tetra Pak and walk out to Walmart and walk out to the other locations out there, or they get an Uber or a Lyft, or they have to buy a car. And now we're back to where we started from. So I think we need to have serious design issues with I think it's an important component, but it has to be a pilot project or a specific feature program. I don't think it's a mainstay of service except for last mile service, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these are all really good points to call out. Let's see. Our next few questions are going to pivot more towards housing issues.
Okay.
But question number 4 is, do you have any plans to expand resources for our unhoused population?
So one of the things that makes me a standout from some of the other members of council is while we all agree that the audit revealed of the shelter revealed some service gaps, and some of them are understandable, some of them are less understandable, but they're there, all of them. And so the approach we took was we wanted to focus on case management. And while I respect that is the way you take an unhoused individual and get them back up into ALICE status and get them wraparound and support services and get them out into a better system with vouchers and housing and whatnot. It takes case management. At the same token, one of the reasons I didn't support the reductions is, okay, well, for the people that you don't serve, if we're scaling back so we can do more case management on a particular number of folks, for everyone that now is off system, they're back out in the field. And why is that a problem? It's a problem because emergency response is generally about $1,000 a call. So we have $1 million ambulance. You might send out a several $1 million fire truck. You definitely have no less than a 2-man crew and probably a 4-man crew. And they're going out to handle what might simply be a triage effort. And so this is where I think, and even if you try to solve that problem with like 2-man squads in an SUV that do triage and rapid response, and I think that's where we should go with EMS lieutenants. But even if you solve that, diversionary services are cheaper than emergency services, however you slice the sandwich. And so the reason I don't support the where we went to is I think it's going to be more costly in the long run. So now how do we get there? We have to be very intentional. One of the things that this council did that didn't exist under previous leadership is we did some data and analytics, and we noticed that, at the DFW adjusted mean income, AMI, area mean income, our area mean income at Denton, our Denton specific AMI, is $25,000 ish, maybe actually closer to $27,000, $28,000 less than Dallas. And so that means when we give tax credits to 80% AMI housing, that's market rate. You're giving tax credits to market rate. And that means that someone that is at the 80% level, the citizens of Denton paid tax deferral and credits and paid out of their taxes for something that doesn't contribute to the affordability of Denton. So I think one of the good things that we did is say that we're only going to focus on 30s and 50s or 60s, depending on which you're looking at. But 30s and 50s from now on, and no more 80s. And we won't write letters of support for 80s. The only way you'll get a letter of support from us is if you leave yourself on the tax roll. So if you want to be affordable at 30, 50, 80, 30, 60, 80 but leave yourself on the tax roll, or you're using state and federal monies, we will absolutely support that kind of housing, because we do need sub-market rate housing. But the other thing that we're running into is the focus we've had is only on these very large institutional investors with 400 or more units, and we're tapping them into the corners of the loop, and the quality of life for them is not great. They often don't have the mass transit that we just talked about in transit-oriented design. So how are they getting to and from? Well, they have to have a car. So they're putting VMT, vehicle miles traveled, on the roads, making our roads wear out faster, making it more expensive for them to live there. So any savings they got by being in a large complex in the corner of the loop with hearing the highway noise all the time is now completely gone, because they had to buy a car and put gas in it because transit options are very limited. And I think that's telling us over and over and over again that this idea that we need large neighborhoods or large apartment complexes can't be the only thing, regardless of whether it's market rate or affordable. We need some opportunities for centralized. We need to follow the comp plan. We need to be centralized where there's existing infrastructure, where it can be cheaper, where you can have ADUs, we can have townhomes, we can have these alternative missing middle housing options that take pressure off the housing market so that we don't keep having costs go up. And at the same token, they're fiduciarily responsible because they're using existing infrastructure in a smarter, wiser way. We're not having to build sewer and electrical and roads out to an apartment complex. And yes, I know when we put those in, when we put sprawl in for a neighborhood, we make the developers do it. But at some point, the citizens start paying for upgrades. So like I didn't support Craver Ranch. And even though we put some affordable housing out at Craver Ranch below the dam, the leapfrog development out there is going to end up being unsustainable in the long run. And the first people that are hit are the most vulnerable, the lower income folks, because they pay a larger percentage of their taxes, or the larger percent of their income in taxes. So, I know I'm talking a lot, but it's because it's a passion of mine that we have to be smart and intentional about allowing neighborhood compatible, green space compatible, transit oriented design, missing middle in the centers of our town, so that you can make the choice whether to be walkable or not. You can make the choice whether to use transit or not. You can make the choice whether to have green space or not. Those are all choices that allow you to get to and from live options, play options, and work options.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Question number 5. Rent continues to increase to absurd levels here in Denton. How would you address this issue? I know we talked a little bit about this, but
Yeah, this is a challenge, partly for what we just talked about in the previous question. There was an undersupply of both affordable and market rate. Now there's no longer an undersupply. We'll probably get back to an undersupply as we continue to grow. But there's not currently a market rate undersupply of dwelling units, but there is an affordable one. But regardless of whether it's affordable or market rate, um, what we need we're finding that rents aren't coming down, even though market rate is now not at saturation, but at least at planned levels. And so what does that imply? They're stabilizing, but they're not really coming down. And so what does that imply? That implies that, well, okay, this maybe is unfair, but it suggests that one possible solution is that people are not following market forces in their rent pricing structures. And a way that makes it easier on them to do that is price fixing software like RealPage. So one of the things that I would like to do, and I've been trying to explore this with the city attorney and the development office, what are our options for disallowing the use of RealPage software? And it's tricky because you have to be tricky how you manage commerce. You don't necessarily, there are rules about what kinds of commerce that you can regulate, where, when, and how, both at the state and federal level. But to the extent that we can say you are not allowed to use price fixing software to keep a certain vacancy rate so that your rents are high, that will create more opportunities for less computer-based pricing, where the computer knows what all the subscribers' prices are and helps you set your vacancy rate and your prices to that sweet spot. That will force you to do your own due diligence and set rates based on your own internal standards as a property owner. And that will put people, essentially it will promote competition. And so as we increase supply, Adam Smith capitalism suggests that the prices should stabilize and go down. The fact that they haven't says that there's other factors coming in, and you could just say it's the growth. But now all the projections say we have enough market rate. So why are the prices barely stabilized? Why aren't they stabilized and coming down? And so I think there's other factors at play that we need to look at.
mm-hmm. Well, let's see here. To close us out, our last question is about cost of living. And I know it's a lot of factors that we talked about today, but number 6, our last one, is people in Denton struggle to afford cost of living, such as transportation, housing, groceries, etc. What do you hope to see the city do to make living here more affordable?
No, so every single question that we just mentioned, every single one of those, transit-oriented design, giving options for bike ped, micromobility, live, work, play, walkability, following the comp plan, all of that isn't just pie in the sky master planning coming out of UNT. The reason all the masters of public administration and the ecologists and everything say that this is the best way isn't merely the quality of life aspects of it, but the fiduciary responsibility of it. It's cheaper if we're all using parking more effectively. It's cheaper if we're using busing. It's cheaper if we're not spending money on things. And a place we can expand to is on utilities. So one of the things we haven't touched on right now is utilities. And so right now we basically have 2 tiers in our electrical utilities. And essentially there's an under 1,000 kilowatt, under a megawatt, and above and below a megawatt. And that's really, it ends up being really quite regressive. If you look at our water system, we actually have 6 use tiers in our water system, sort of high, middle, low, there's 6 tiers. And those 6 tiers allow so that as you consume more and more and more and more, you are charged a higher and higher rate. So if you are a big field golf course where you're putting out tons of water, yeah, you can do that. But we're going to charge you the most for that. And if you're a small household, and so that's where we can use that sort of tiering methodology and make the large users pay their fair share. And so what that probably means, so I'd like to see that expand into electricity as well. And so make the large users pay their fair share. So probably your average household won't see much change. I mean, we're going to, sort of peg it at the medium income, medium use. Maybe that's still the 1 megawatt or 1 megawatt hour, that 1,000 kilowatt hour level that we already are. But if you're a slightly smaller middle class household, or if you're a low income household and you're consuming a lot less, then your rate should go down. And if you're a large household with 2 AC units, or you're a large business, cooling things down, you're probably going to see a little bit of a spike. And again, this is a consumption-based thing, because why? Why do we want a consumption-based? Because our distribution grid and how fast we change our transformers and our lines and our services and our service calls are all based on consumption levels. And so some people have tried to refute this idea of having six-ish tiers on the electrical grid, and because they say often small households have not been built at modern efficiency standards the way a brand new home is. And that's true. If you've got a small cottage-sized home built in the 30s, 40s, or 50s downtown, you might not have the insulation. You might have, your foundation may have shifted, and you may be leaky. Maybe you need some aluminum shielding. Maybe you need some weather stripping. Maybe you need some foam in your walls. But here's the thing. We've got these GreenSense programs, and we're working right now. We've doubled the size of our GreenSense program, and one of the primary focuses on that is weatherization. So there are opportunities for you to come get a heat audit of your home. There are opportunities for you to come get free weather stripping, or not free, but rebates for weather stripping, rebates for foam insulation, rebates for various things that will reduce your thermal input in the summer so that you cool less. We provide fans and other things. And so this idea that, and even then, let's pretend you did none of those rebates. You took advantage of none of our tools. You still will have lower consumption simply because you are a smaller footprint. You're often 1 or 2 or 3 human beings. You're like a couple and a child and their dog. And you will just not use 10, 15, 20 kilowatts a day. Yes, in efficiency wise, you may not be as efficient as a large country club road home that's brand new built, but you still have a lower electricity footprint. And so you can really, and as soon as you make some of these efficiency upgrades, bam, you're in a lower tier. Whereas they're already efficient, and the way they can do is now that incentivizes them to get out of their HVAC units and into heat pumps, which are 2 or 3, maybe as much as 5x more efficient on the grid. That tells the small business and company, oh, you know what? I'm going to go ahead. Not only am I going to put in heat pumps and insulation, but I'm going to go get a PACE grant, and I'm going to put solar panels on my roof and batteries in my basement, and I'm going to offset my costs and bring myself down from a medium-sized business to the footprint of a small business or even a household. And now I'm at those cheaper consumption tier rates. But that's cool. That's exactly what we want. It's not a bug that lower consumption has lower rates. That's the feature of the system. And I think that's the way we get to where we're more resilient, we're more robust to changes. We're looking at it gives us an opportunity to go to distributed resources, wind and solar and battery throughout our town, so that we extend the lifespan of our grid. And I know I'm focusing a lot on energy, but let's think about it. After rent, and so rent and taxes, what's the next costliest thing? The next costliest thing are utilities. And after that, it's food and medicine. And so we already talked about transit-oriented design. That's maybe helping us keep use transit instead of fuel and buy our own car and pay for our insurance. And so maybe those cost savings we can put into medicine, but you still have those other rent and utilities. If you're trying to really be cost conscious, if you're a student that's sending all their money to UNT or TWU in tuition, these are opportunities to have a very small footprint and to be green and take advantage of these subsidies, so that these are the kinds of things that we're being holistic about roads. We're being holistic about utilities. We're being holistic about pathing. We're being holistic about transit. It's all part and parcel together.
Right on, right on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to answer a lot of these questions. We have a couple minutes left. If there is any last thing that you want to say to people, and like where can they find you or information about your campaign or anything like that?
No, I appreciate that opportunity. As I introduce myself, I'm Dr. Brian Beck. My webpage is beckfordenton.com. I'm on every social media platform, either as Beck for Denton or Brian Beck for Denton. My most active one, because I'm a Gen X, is Facebook. But you can see me on Instagram. You can see me on Blue Sky. You can see me on X. I don't like X as much, but you can see I'm on Threads. So I am on all the places that you will think to look for, either Beck for Denton or Brian Beck for Denton, depending on what I could get a name on. We've got about 3 weeks left before early voting starts. Early voting starts on April 20th. 420 is an easy way for people to remember when early voting starts. The election is May 3rd. I'm really looking at a crowdsourced campaign. I don't take any developer money. I don't take any fossil fuel money. If you have an item that comes before council, I won't take your money. So it means that I am crowdsourced from the get-go. And that makes it really challenging, because the powers that be in special interests, they want you to focus on and listen to them. And that's why they fund your campaign. And I think it's really important that when we listen to the citizens of Denton, we listen to all 166,000 of us, and we don't scale it by the size of your yard or the number of dollars in your wallet. We listen to all the voices and we come up with a consensus opinion. And that's really, really important to me. It's how I treated, when I was a professor, I didn't treat any of my students any differently than any other student. I listened to them. I met them where they were. I tried to convey the information in biology to them. I treat my campaign the same way, and I'm focused going into the mayorship on affordability, the infrastructure, the creativity of Denton, and innovation pipelines, so that people can have successful careers and raise a family here in Denton.
Right on. And we can link your Facebook page, any of your links, wherever we post some of these videos and stuff, for people below. But that is it for us today. Thank you again for making time for us and answering these
Absolutely.
questions.
Thank you for your time.
Of course. You have a good rest of your night.
All right, we'll see you soon.